work at a DoorDash place and it wasn't evil, and that wasn't the policy, I probably would have been like, hey, can I go like, make some deliveries for a week? I need to know what it's like to use the software.
Yeah.
Because how can I make something if I don't, know, how can you imagine making Photoshop and never drawing anything, right? And not knowing how to draw. You can't make a good Photoshop then.
Yeah.
You need to,
Well, I think that's a big part of why so many open source creative software is just like unusable garbage.
No, it's one of the many reasons. But also, it's not that what I think is interesting is DoorDash is smart enough to recognize the need to dog food in that regards, but they also make software that doesn't just face their own delivery people. They make software that faces restaurants. They make software that faces, I guess you have no problem dog fooding as a customer ordering food, but they should make their employees go work in the restaurants too.
Yeah.
Dog food DoorDash as a restaurant, to see how that works, to take orders from DoorDash, to get delivery workers coming in, etc.
Yeah. The other argument a lot of people said is they don't own a car.
No, well, I mean,
the
company should be providing the car.
No, they don't. That seems to be the thing. They don't provide that. You have to do it on your own.
Well, that's a problem. That's definitely a problem. They also shouldn't make you do the delivery outside of your normal work hours. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I think we can just go. I'll come up with an opening bit to get us going. We can always move right into the news. I got 2 Geek Bites. I already went live because there were some people waiting.
Obviously, I can't think of the opening bit because as soon as an episode happens, all opening bits are erased.
I'll come up with something before I start. It's Wednesday, December 29th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, in the last episode of 2021, we will be reviewing the French animated feature, The Summit of the Gods. All right, put a little marker there. Oh, we don't have any more episodes to do this year.
Yeah,
Here comes 2022.
Uh-oh.
Very similar to 2021, I think.
Uh-oh.
All right. What could I start with? Okay, I know what I can start with. So I've ended up, for various reasons, watching a lot of British game shows on YouTube, Taskmaster in particular, and also...
That's all you got going on?
But also a bunch of skiing videos, and also a bunch of true crime videos. And it was interesting to see how people using our TV and us using our TV, like our IP address, even if YouTube is not logged in, what YouTube thinks the people who tend to be in this house watching YouTube on the HTPC or from this IP address
if you're
like to watch.
In, it will,
if you're not logged in, it also definitely does that.
If you're not logged in, absolutely, right? But if you're logged in, it will only check things that were viewed by that user that's logged in.
Yep. It is fascinating.
I don't get recommendations for things that other people in the house watch. But as soon as you log out, suddenly you see all kinds of stuff. Right?
It is just fascinating to see what YouTube recommends when the HTPC is not logged in versus when I'm logged in. But at the same time, sometimes I'll see something interesting when I'm not logged in, and then I go to like it, but then I have to log in to like it, and then it starts polluting my YouTube recommendation engine. That was the most exciting thing I have to talk about since the last time we did a show. Everything that happened the previous week just disappeared from my brain.
Yeah, I know. I definitely had some opening bits, and I said before the last show, like, hey, we got a pile of opening bits because we haven't done a show in a while, but as soon as we do the show, we'll use like one of those bits, and all the other ones will disappear from our minds. That's
it's like a write many, read once heap. You put things in the heap, but if you ever read what's on top of the heap, like to say it on Geek Nights, the heap gets emptied instantly.
Yeah, you get one random item and then it's it. Is there a game to be made with that mechanic?
So thanks to Google Photos, and it's like, hey, remember when you did this? So we did do something. So over the weekend, we wanted to go hiking, but because of all the holiday travel, we did not want to leave the city because we did not have to deal with coming back into the city with a million people traveling. So for the first time in my life, we did an urban hike, as in we just started walking. We walked up to Astoria over the RFK around Randall's Island, and we walked from the top of the 125th Street down to Central Park and just kept going. We went I forget how many miles we went, but we just spent all day just walking. through New York.
I mean, I've done the not as like an intentional thing, like I'm going to walk, but I've been like, I will go to that place. I will walk to get there, and have walked far as a result.
Yep, done that.
Yeah.
But that was the furthest I've ever walked in one go in New York, and it was.
I guess usually the circumstances where I did that were usually the weather's good. I'm in this place now. The next place I have to go is all the way over there, and I don't have to be at that place for a significant amount of time. If I take the train, I'm going to be sitting around there waiting.
Yep. You know what? Where I usually do that walk was either to MSG from like my work in ancient times when we would go to hockey games together, or walking to Astoria Kaufman from home was like the other one. But the fun,
there was a city bike, yeah.
Yeah, now there's a city bike. That kind of changed everything. But so the walk was good, but it made me realize something. I have not been in the interior of Central Park in like 6 years.
I think I biked through it.
Yeah, I biked through it a bunch, but biking through Central Park, you bike around the big loop that mostly skirts the edge of the park. All that interior stuff, like all those little paths, I basically haven't been in those things in forever, because even pre-COVID.
Depends which you're talking about, like the ramble or whatever.
Yeah, the ramble, the walking, no bikes allowed path around the reservoir, like all those interior places, all those pavilions, the castle, like all that stuff.
The zoo? You go to the awful zoo?
Yeah, we didn't go into the zoo because COVID, but we walked top to bottom of the park in the interior. And it got to the point where I had to look on Google Maps to remember where certain landmarks were in the park, because I just didn't remember anymore.
No, I know where they are.
Do you know what street? What street is Belvedere Castle at?
I don't know.
Is that north or south of the reservoir?
I don't know what street it is, but I could walk there.
Is it north or south of the reservoir? Is the ramble north or south of the reservoir?
I don't know where they are relatively, but I know.
I'm just saying,
standing at a spot.
You pivoted pretty quick from
individual thing by looking around at like the buildings in the distance.
Oh yeah, but you pivoted pretty quick from I still know where everything is to not being able to answer even the most.
Because it's like okay, if I see X buildings in the distance, then I know that it's between those buildings, and I walk in that direction. And you want me to find another thing? It's like, well, I never found that thing relative to the second thing.
But the reservoir is the largest and most obvious landmark that is the most walked past in the park.
There's a lot of water going on.
Yeah. Anyway, you got any news on this Wednesday?
What was my news? All right, so Naoki Urasawa, one of the best living manga creators who made many famous mangas that you hopefully have read. Asadora, his great new manga that is very obviously a manga that he made because it follows all of his typical storytelling. All of his, signature moves are on display in that manga. So if you like that, you should read it. But anyway, he has decided to release all or most, I guess not all, but the vast majority of the manga he's ever created in a digital format so that you can read it all. However, it's not in English yet. It's Japanese. So he's made a website and he made a YouTube video where he announced this on his own channel. And basically, crap ton of his manga, even going all the way back to like Yawara and stuff, is available in Japanese. More is coming. He still seems to be hesitant about the manga of his I want to read most, which is Billy Bat, which is not on the list and is still not available in English. Maybe there is a pirated one translation out there somewhere.
Yeah,
they seek it out.
Monster was not on the first list, but it's coming in February.
Monster's coming. But yeah, hopefully he can get on the English bandwagon with this.
That, honestly, just the way business tends to go over there, I kind of give that a 50-50 shot. I could see this easily being a Japan exclusive forever.
Somewhat unique, different case. But it is a thing where, like, hey, all the Japanese media, right, mostly anime and manga, but also movies and other things, right? They're always having distributors and publishers and in-between companies, right? And even when they sort of, do it themselves, like, it's a Bandai Visual situation, right? Yep. When they do that, right? But here we have a situation where I guess is he going through Shueisha or whatever his publisher is? I don't know. Viz publishes his manga in the U.S., so I guess Viz would have to be involved.
Well, he has a website for this now, and this is all only available in specific Japanese ebook stores.
Right. But still, it's like, hey, she's basically sort of going direct-ish. And I'm waiting to see, because, you see a lot of comic creators are effectively sort of going direct to the world with Webtoon, right? Because, like, you get your comic on Webtoon, that's effectively like a worldwide distro, right? Because you can get Webtoon in like almost any country, and it's usually there's translations of things, right? Like even us not speaking certain languages, we can get foreign Webtoons, right? We can read them. They're in English. They got subtitles or translations or whatever. Some of them, a lot of them. So I'm waiting. It's like, hey, is there going to be a big time manga creator who's going to be like, you know what? I'm just gonna, not like webcomic, but like actually ebook published to the world in all the languages.
Basically, right? A modern webcomic. I feel like that day is coming.
Right. And it's like, but do the English comic people, right? People in like the United States, it's like, are they even doing that? You can go to your Comixology and on Amazon or whatever and get all kinds of, digital comics, even mangas that are translated, but those are all from US distributors. It's like, are any of them, right? Like, is there anyone out there who makes an ebook in every language and just puts it out there for the whole world, right?
Yeah, direct creators pretty much know.
Prose and not graphic novels doing that.
And the people in the US are on the avant-garde of that, like the ones who are doing a big English direct publishing of their own works online, and with maybe they partner with a publisher for the physical version. They tend to publish only in English and really only go after the domestic market.
I'm just saying, you don't see too many ebooks for sale that are graphic novels that aren't through a publisher, distributor, or something, right? The direct, like Kindle Direct, is almost always just 100% prose.
The funny thing is, now would be a good time to do that because increasingly, a lot of people have high-resolution tablets or phones.
A lot of people are just reading. I stopped. I think this is actually, I guess, sort of an opening bit. So since April of 2006, every single month I've pre-ordered comic books from DCBService.com, which is still a great business. There's no complaint with them whatsoever. And you basically, the way it works, I've talked about this a long time ago. You put in a pre-order out of, the catalog of everything a comic book store can buy, and you pre-order 2 months in advance. You get a ridiculous discount, and then starting 2 months after your first order, you just get boxes in the mail every month full of comics. And that's how I filled up all these shelves over a zillion, 15 years, something like that, right?
As meanwhile, I'm trying to get rid of as much paper in my house as I can.
Well, I'm also getting rid of, but, the point is there's some things. For example, I got 22 volumes of One Punch Man over here, right? And I was digging it, and then over time I stopped digging it as much because it sort of fell into a quagmire plot-wise, right? And now it's like I'm sort of satisfied I've had enough One Punch Man, or I can just read the rest digitally. I don't feel like even if I, the level of that I enjoy One Punch Man, which of the early volumes is a great deal, I don't really feel the need to like own the volumes, right? Like some of these I gotta own, right? Especially ones that aren't gonna be available.
I mean, there's a reason I'm not getting rid of that barely held together Sanctuary or Eagle that I got back there.
Right. Or so some of these books are like legendary, right? But some of them it's like, okay, I'm not gonna read this again in my life, right? I'm only gonna live this one time. So I don't need them anymore. And also it's like like Rim was starting to explain, the reading experience of the digital comics has improved a significant deal. I'm reading Chainsaw Man entirely digitally. I've never owned a volume of Chainsaw Man, and I never will, right? I'm enjoying it a lot. It's great. We did an episode on it. But I'm only just reading it digitally. That's it.
Yep.
So and also a lot of things I was reading, right? So for example, City over there, right? I feel like I'm going to keep City. I own it. I'll probably read it again before in my life, so I'm not going to get rid of it. But it's just one volume left. That's over. It's done. There's no more to buy. So as things ended, I'm ordering less. So actually, I didn't, for the first time in 15, 16 years, I didn't put it in order at all. There was nothing to order in the whole order form that I wanted that was worth ordering.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit my comic reading has dried up to near zero, partly just during the pandemic, because most of the time I'm reading comics is traveling. I'll like burn through a whole series on like a work trip.
I'm reading more because I finally have time to catch up on all these ones that I bought and didn't read yet. But I'm buying less because, there's just less the quantity of things that are coming out that I don't already own. Because when I started buying, there was this decades of backlog of things I hadn't.
Kind of like when we first started watching anime, there was a decades deep backlog of top tier anime. Right. So we watched as much as we could.
Up on that backlog, there was a second backlog, right? But after a few waves, the waveform, the amplitude gets down, right?
I mean,
it's like,
look at games. I am just now working on finishing the campaign in Radio Commander, a game that I bought so many years ago, I struggle to say what year I bought it.
Well, games take a lot longer to play, so the rate at which they come out versus the rate at which you can play them, it's like you can't catch up. But comics, it's like I have a stack down there. I have every volume of Full Metal Alchemist, right? I'm going to read it all and get rid of it. Probably to book off or something. Or maybe to second dibs, who knows, right? But to read all those volumes, which I haven't done yet, I've read some of them, is not going to take very long at all. It's like 20-something volumes. That'll take me, what, like a couple days, right? Way less time than Tail of Genji.
Well, that was a matter partly of willpower.
Yeah. So, Urasawa's going digital, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, here's where it goes. I know, I never actually finished 20th Century Boys.
It's got an ending.
Yeah, they I don't know, Monster is still, I think,
Monster is much better.
Yeah, Monster hit multiple points along the way where I thought, all right, it seems like this is wrapping. Oh, there it goes. So I got a couple of quick little geek bites. So I did watch with Emily just recently because it just came out on streaming. Disney's latest animated feature, Encanto.
I didn't even know this existed till you said something.
It is absolutely fantastic. I will say, and it pains me to say this, it is materially better than Raya, and I really liked Raya, but this is just a better film, like hands down. It's tighter. It's a musical, like a full-on stage musical, basically, to the point that they choreographed physical act singers and dancers doing these scenes like it was a stage play as reference for the animation. The songs are great. The characters are great. And all I can say is just go. I highly recommend you watch it. We'll review it at some point whenever Scott sees it. I'll just leave it at that. I love the shit out of this movie. I kind of want to watch it again. It's just a spectacle.
It's gonna take a while for me to get back to the Disney Plus, right? We're currently, getting close to canceling Netflix, and then, gonna be all HBO Max for a while. And
yep. The trouble is,
Disney Plus will come next in the queue.
We finished Lupin, and I thought maybe we can cancel Netflix, watch all the other stuff, and pick Netflix back up once like Dragon Prince comes back and Arcane Season 2 comes back. But we just started watching Centaurworld last night, and I gotta geek bite that show because
I heard that it's kind of wild.
It's both exactly what I expected and nothing like I expected at the same time. It is interesting. The way I will describe it, having watched a bunch of season 1, is that it is half of it is take Adventure Time, but just do the weird Pendleton Ward stuff. But instead of going weird and navel gazing, just go absolutely nuts. But then frame it with a 100% dead serious, animated in a completely different style for real fantasy drama. That is very gritty and real. And the dichotomy between those two stories and where they seem to eventually are going to be on a course for intersection, that is the story. It's abstract and weird, and it's also extremely musical. There's a song like every few minutes in this show.
No, okay. It's not like Adventure Time where it's like song once in a while.
It is like
every
songs move the plot, and songs might literally be happening for real as magic in the show itself. It's also very high concept in that it almost seems to be going for this angle where the Centaurworld with this ridiculous nonsense it's like a magical world cut off from the rest of reality where people are basically gods, but also don't face any conflict anymore and might have turned themselves stupid. It's hard to say. I haven't seen enough to know where this is really going yet.
Mm-hmm.
But
they've canceled the rest of the kids' hockey. Good. Okay.
Oh yeah, I've seen. There's
started, but
a whole bunch of minor leagues across a lot of sports have canceled in the last 24 hours. A whole bunch of high school stuff got shut down in the last 48 hours too, sports wise.
Good.
So yeah, I highly recommend watching at least one episode of Centaurworld. That is enough to know if you're willing to see more or not. Just one episode, because you will see both sides of that, like the dichotomy in that one episode, and those two threads continue in every episode I've seen so far.
Okay.
All right. Put a little marker here. All right. But anyway, things of the day. So I don't know much about this show yet. I found a place where I can watch the first episode of it. I got to figure out where to watch it for real. I'm sure there's a fan community with English subtitles, kind of like with a lot of Korean dramas where we can see this. But I'll link to this tweet that got me excited. It's just a clip from this show that's very popular in China that seems to be running right now. And the way it seems to go down, this show is just 24, like the American show 24, but set during the Tang Dynasty in China. And it looks absolutely bonkers, and I am absolutely going to watch.
There's a lot of ones like that. Yeah.
Yep. Kind of like when we saw the trailer for Kung Fu Hustle with the axes, and we were like, whatever the fuck that is, we have to watch it as soon as possible. It scratched that itch in a way that nothing has scratched in a while. Like, here's some Kung Fu looking, like, historical drama nonsense. I'm definitely going to watch an episode of this soon, and I'll let you know.
That's something that I've always talked about, is how you look in the U.S., right? Look at U.S. television, and there's like big shows, legendary shows, right? Especially in like the sitcom department, right? You get your Seinfelds and your Friendses and your Cheerses, right? Like these mega, Dallases, right? These big shows.
The finale of MASH was like a mass cultural event in the United States
at the time, right? But at any given time, it's like, let's see, NBC sitcoms right now.
Like, what's the big show?
Googling, right? Yeah, it's like, okay, so you got like, what's it? Mr. Mayor. I don't even know what the heck that is.
I have no idea what that is.
Right? Young Rock, I guess it's The Rock, right? It's like, there are these shows, let's see, CBS sitcoms. There are shows that are like, they're on, broadcast TV. They're like big, they're in this country, but like anyone in any other country doesn't know what the hell these are, right? Unless they become, big enough to be like, say, like The Office, where like you start getting adaptations in other countries and stuff, right? But they can still have some large-ish significance, right? Some, and then other countries have shows of that level, right? Every country does, right? But you basically can't see any of them, right? Outside of the countries that they are from. It's like they're unique to that place only. Those are never getting translated, exported, whatever, right?
Yep. And even when that happens, people outside of that market often don't understand, like, explaining to people outside of Europe or who are deep into comics how big the Disney ducks are in the entire world except the US.
Right. So something like a, I don't know, like a Saved by the Bell tier of show, right? It's like there are Saved by the Bell tier things all around the world. There's a Chinese one, an Indian one, one from Uganda. There's every country, Russian ones, right? Brazilian ones, everywhere. They got them, and you're never going to see them unless you live in that country.
Thanks a lot. Now my brain, like this ridiculous mimetic Pavlovian response, the entire theme song of Saved by the Bell is literally stuck in my head now.
Oh, that's good.
It's all right, because I'm saved by the bell. Anyway, what do you got?
What? Oh, my thing of the day. So this thing has gotten really popular over the past, I guess maybe week or two. I don't know, but it's just this website and with this little word game, and it updates with a new word every day. I don't know how long it's existed for, but the reason it's gotten popular is they have a very clever social media sharing mechanism. And so the way the game works is you get a word, I think it's a 6-letter word every day.
5?
5-letter word. And you just guess what word it is. You just type in 5 letters. And it will tell you of the 5 letters you typed in, right? Which I think have to be a word. I don't think you can just type in 5 random letters. You can't just be like RSTL, right? It'll tell you if a letter is gray, that means that letter is not in the correct word. If a letter is green, that is a letter that is in the word and is in the correct position. And if it's yellow, that letter is in the word, but it's in a different position. And so you just keep guessing and you try to guess, in...
Yep, it will not let you... It will not let you type in a word that is not a word.
Yeah. So... I've got, I tried it yesterday and today. And yesterday, I think it took me 3 guesses. And today, it took me like 2 guesses. I did pretty good. But I forgot to share it. And sharing is the important part because after you get the answer, if you click share, let's say you tweet, right? Let's say you tweet your answer out. It'll tell you everyone else your score. But in your tweet, it uses like emojis and Unicode to make a little grid of squares that shows how, your solving process. Like, oh, my first guess, it was all yellow, and my second guess, it was all green somehow, if that was possible, right? But no one knows what word you guessed. They just know that you can just see how well you did just by looking at that colored grid of blocks.
I'm trying it for the first time right now, and it's real fun.
Yeah, but you can only play it once a day because they only change the word once a day. So it's like if you play it on your phone and get it right, you can just go to your computer and just type in the right answer and get it in one shot. But who cares? It's like big deal, right? That's not the point. And it's just a website. You go to it and you play it. It's the same word for everybody every day. So don't let anyone tell you what the word is.
It's got a good UX too, in that I like how the keyboard updates to remind you what letters you've used or not, so you can just focus on the puzzle itself.
Also, I realized there's a hard mode. Hard mode means that all revealed letters must be used on subsequent guesses. And unbeknownst to me, and on my first day, I was just playing hard mode. I was forcing the hard mode rules on myself because I thought that was the best strategy. But apparently, I guess a pro move might be to guess 2 unrelated, completely words that don't share any letters first. And then you'll have enough to work with and just nail it on the 3rd one with more consistency. But I was imposing the hard rule restriction on myself naturally. So I feel like I'll just enable it from now on.
In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, Tale of Genji. I propose we do it at the end of January, but it's up to you at this point. I'm going to steamroll through.
I'm hoping we're going to get through it somehow. We're going to make it happen.
I slowed down a little because now when I read a chapter, I'm then going and reading a short summary of that chapter from like one of those literary guides just to make sure I didn't miss anything super obvious and to remember who the characters were. I don't know if it's actually slowing me down, though, because I kind of read the chapter faster now that I'm doing this because I know I have this safety net at the end of the chapter. So we'll see. That might be a technique if any of you are slowing down.
Yeah, I'm actually working on the GeekNights website more than I'm reading the book, which is maybe a problem.
That's pretty
not a problem.
I'm working idly on a panel that I'm just going to do online as me because definitely not going to MagFest. If it was not obvious, we will not be at MagFest, which is coming up pretty soon. Pretty much urge you.
Isn't looking likely unless some kind of great thing happens.
Nope. Though PAX East isn't even
possible. I hope it's, but very unlikely. I would never. Nope. I wouldn't bet a penny.
But MagFest is happening basically a week, like right in the danger zone of the spike that's going to be caused by the holidays.
I'm not going anywhere near that MagFest.
Nope. In fact, if PAX,
-0%. Negative 1,000% chance.
A few weeks ago, I was willing to go to PAX Unplugged for 3 hours to do a panel wearing a mask the whole time, even on stage. If PAX Unplugged had been the weekend of MagFest, as opposed to then, I would have bailed. For the first time in my life, I would have called a PAX and said, "Sorry, we can't perform."
Yeah.
But that panel is on YouTube if you want to see it. Despite the mask, the audio sounds just fine because I spent a lot. One thing I will share, because it's the meta moment. This was the hardest audio engineering exercise I have ever done, with one exception, on a panel. It is really hard to record someone who's wearing a mask and giving a talk. Good Lord. But I did it. So watch this video, if for nothing else, than to appreciate how fucking good of a job I did.
You could have dubbed it.
You know what? I could have, because YouTube subtitles.
You could have just given it again when you got home.
I could have ADR'd it. The problem is I did not script this panel, because when you and I do a lecture together, we tend to script a lot more in terms of like what we're going to say on each slide. When I do talks by myself, I tend to riff a lot more and often go off in strange tangents based on how the audience is reacting.
But you need more tangents because you got less time. You got more time to fill in.
But also, I need clever ways to get the audience to laugh or react enough to give me a break to like take a sip of water, collect my thoughts, take a breath. Usually I say something controversial that you'll react to or hand the baton to you, so I have like 30 seconds to like do that. It is more than twice as hard to do a 1-hour lecture by yourself than to do it with a partner, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, big 30 minutes versus an hour, yeah.
Yep.
even if we don't split the time 50-50, it's still...
Yep, still just having that relief to like take a break is a big deal. Or Scott will say a point that I forgot to get to and vice versa. Like all that kind of dynamic happens too. Anyway, it's on YouTube. You can just watch it. I feel like this panel is basically complete, so I don't think we need to run it again anytime soon.
Maybe when I finish all this website book stuff, we'll get back to, lecturing, paneling, something along those lines.
Yep. Oh, actually, I did. A little bird told me that ZenkaiCon, which I'm not going to physically, very likely, considering the circumstances, but they're going to have an online panel track despite having a physical con.
Will anyone come to it, though?
A lot of people. See that not enough for like anyone to make money off of this, but there is a significant contingent of people, and there's some data to back this up. Not enough for big companies or big cons to care, but definitely enough for small cons to care who want to go to cons for various reasons, often due to disability or lack of money, can't go to cons, and they will voraciously consume online video content of panels.
So my question to the listener is this, right? It's like, let's say I did a panel, right? And then it's like, I could just put it on YouTube right away, but if you went to like an online convention and they just showed a video that was already on YouTube, would that feel like cheapen it? Or would you not care?
But no, the main reason they're doing this is to also stream those panels on their YouTube channel during the con.
Right, but it's like, or do I have, the question is really, do I have to sort of withhold the content so that the convention gets an exclusive first, or do I not have to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. PAX wasn't super clear on that. I just uploaded the panel a couple weeks after PAX, just as a courtesy.
Right, but it's like, do I have to do that? It's like people who are attending the online con are very unlikely to have been to my YouTube channel on their own.
True.
Already, right? So it's like... And regardless, it's like, so could I do a thing where it's like I just record panels? Should I just upload them all to YouTube and then tell conventions, yeah, you want some content? Check out my YouTube channel. Pick any video, show it, right?
So I actually,
do I have to stock up, send them to conventions, and then once all the conventions are done, then put it on the YouTube channel?
So I can't announce anything yet because nothing has been done, but I have been talking to someone who works with a large convention, and we have an ongoing conversation now about interest in using the GeekNights back catalog of lectures we've given. Because they're Creative Commons.
Commons license, go wild. It's all yours.
Exactly.
Creative Commons, I can't stop you. Even if I wanted to, I can't stop you. Too late. Past me already didn't stop you. So I can't stop past me either. Past me is.
But the other thing,
gone down that road.
The other thing that I guess I'll ask the listener while we're on this tack, then we'll get into the main bit because this movie was great. But I feel like if Scott and I just record a panel on our own, like if we just do it not for a convention, because there's some topics we've wanted to do a panel on, but the con situation is still in flux because of COVID. I feel like it's more fun for me, at least. I don't know about you, Scott. I've enjoyed when we've given a panel to a con and then being able to just sit in the chat and react to people who are watching it live for the first time in a group. So I kind of want to use the YouTube Premiere capability if we record a panel that's not for a con so that it airs for the first time at like 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday.
We could do that. We could try that one time, make a YouTube Premiere.
Because I think it would be fun to be able to hang out in the chat without having to be on stage. Because there's a lot of reasons we don't take questions on stage.
If had video and screen sharing, we'd be set. Right?
There's no way that is not in the Discord hopper. That has to be like...
What's taking so long? What's taking so long?
Right?
It shouldn't be that hard with what they've already got.
Discord, need a product manager? Hire me. I'll make it done. I'll make it happen. All right. Anyway, let's get into the review because Emily saw this movie.
Let me give you some background info here.
Oh, because I have some background info. Emily saw this movie some time ago because of an Academy screening that she was able to go to.
I got even farther background info on this. Going back to like 15 years ago.
This was one of those screenings where I couldn't even go. Like I couldn't even ride on her coattails to go to this one. That's how locked down it was. Yeah. So she comes back and she's like, "This movie's amazing. You've got to see it." Oh wait, you can't.
Right. So back in mid 2000s, when Geek Nights was early, I guess later 2000s, we were going to Mocha festivals, and Mocha festivals were still in the Armory or even the Puck building, right? One of the booths that I always saw there was a publisher, Fanfare / I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I'm sorry, Ponemon. I guess it's French, right?
Yeah.
And they publish many, they're really like at least in the U.S., it's a very small publisher in the U.S., right? Importing, various works, translating them and whatnot, right? Like really boutique graphic novel selection here, all right? And one of the things that they did is I believe they still have, like the U.S. exclusive license for distributing the works of Jiro Taniguchi, right? If it's a Jiro Taniguchi manga in the US, they publish it. And I had a, I recognize your face relationship with the guy who would always work at that booth. So
I can't remember the names of half the game publishers I talked to at PAXs or whatever, but I remember exactly what they look like when they're standing behind their own booths.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so one of the works that I noticed at that booth, I think one of the last, was Summit of the Gods, right? Which is, I believe it's 5 or 6 volumes in total. I don't know if all of them are out, but I knew that's how I knew it existed. I knew that this was a manga about mountain climbing from Jiro Taniguchi that was available in whole or in part in English, and that it was like, legendary and great. And I hadn't read it, and I still haven't read it, but I have read other Jiro Taniguchi works. So Jiro Taniguchi, I think, passed away like a few years ago. It might have been news on this show, but if you don't know, Jiro Taniguchi is this manga / gekiga creator who is in sort of this unique space on his own, in that, first of all, it seems to me like the impression that I've always gotten is that France loves him way more than Japan does. That's just like this impression that I've gotten because his works just seem to be huge in France.
Well, also like another one of his comics was adapted into a live-action Belgian movie.
Yeah. In fact, the most recent book of his that I bought and own is The Guardians of the Louvre. There's a series of graphic novels.
Oh, yeah, you were talking about that.
Right. There's a whole series that the Louvre commissioned, right, from various graphic novel creators around the world to each create an individual comic that involved the Louvre. So I got one from the JoJo creator, right? Urasawa's got one, right? I got the Jiro Taniguchi one. And so what Jiro Taniguchi does is sort of unique in the manga space, at least in terms of mangas that are accessible to the US market, is that his works generally don't involve sci-fi, fantasy, magic, or anything unrealistic at all, right? They're almost always some sort of, human drama that is, I don't say not adult porn, but adult, and like children would be bored out of their minds.
Oh yeah, the movie we just watched, a child would just be like, "This is just old people on a mountain."
Right, exactly. It's you have to have an adult, a mature sensibility to care about just human interest stories like this. Because there's nothing fantastical or Miyazaki about it, right? It's like, here's some people doing a thing, right? It's about human emotions and things that can actually happen, could have actually happened, or did actually happen. And they're generally all like amazing, and it's the artistic style of his that the movie captured very well. Even though it wasn't perfect, we'll get to that. And artistic wise, we'll get to that in a second. But when you look at his character designs, right, they're sort of in that space where it's like you can tell that it was, a manga creator who drew those people, right? But it's not like Triangle Chin,
Yeah.
Evangelion, Naruto, right? It's much and I think that it's much closer to in this in between space, right? Between of more like a realistic human depiction, but still a simplified manga depiction. But much like,
I mean, you could say the same thing about some of Urasawa's work, like.
Sure, well, but Urasawa has like that sort of like style that's particular to him.
Yeah,
you can just tell that's an Urasawa piece.
Oh, hey, that's Master Keaton.
Eyebrow he'd always draw anyway. But the backgrounds, much like in Death Note, are like just these incredible backgrounds, right? That just like someone spent way too much time drawing because they had nothing better to do, right?
Though you're right on the France thing too, because he actually was knighted as a Chevalier of the Order of Art and like some big order. He's a knight.
Checking out Wikipedia probably.
When you realize I stream my desktop while we're doing Geek Nights, so people can see exactly what I'm looking at.
Looking at the Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. But yeah, that's who Jiro Taniguchi is. Sadly passed away a few years ago. Legendary manga creator. If you see Jiro Taniguchi's name on a manga, it's probably good. You should probably just read it. So this movie is an animated 90-minute adaptation of the manga Summon of the Gods.
Yep.
And it came out very recently, and it's on Netflix, I believe exclusively in the US.
Yep, and it only recently appeared on Netflix. Like it just like you can watch this now, and we couldn't have said that. I don't know when it actually hit.
Right.
Let's see.
And it's only 90 minutes long-ish, right? It's not one of those mega long movies. So you can just
longer than I thought. It hit on November 30th.
Yeah. And it's actually, you might think, oh, this is an anime movie. No, it's a French movie. It was made by French studio, right?
Yep.
The original language is French. Don't watch Japanese with English subtitles. Watch French with English subtitles. It's in France. It's in French, even though this is something really interesting that I'm going to give a lot of credit for, right? Is that if this had been made, right, by a U.S. Hollywood animation studio, say Disney, right, they would have made it an American mountain climber, right, speaking English. A French studio made a movie based on a Japanese manga, and it was a Japanese mountain, just like the original manga. They didn't change it. It was a Japanese mountain climber who was from Japan, right? He lived in Japan. The original dub language is French, just because French voice actors were the original voice cast.
Yeah.
But they didn't make it a French story or anything. They kept it as it was. It's a story about a Japanese people, right, who do mountain climbing. So that's A+ France, not Euro washing, right, at all.
And obviously, this is a review. We won't spoil anything material because I highly recommend you watch this movie. This movie is phenomenal. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, even spoiling, it's like, even if I told you the whole plot just straight up, it's like, there's nothing in the plot. It's not about surprises, right? It's like you basically know as soon as you know what it's about, what's going to happen, right?
Yep.
It's just so obvious. It's like you don't make one of these a story about a mountain climber, right?
It was Chekhov's "What would you do if your friend was hanging from the knife, from the rope, and you had a knife?"
Right? It's like, come on, people. It's not about that, right? So basically, it's the plot structure is sort of this cliche of it's about a person, but we don't see that person. Instead, we see a journalist who's investigating that person, and you get flashbacks as the journalist discovers more information about the person. And I said, when I was watching it, I said to myself, yeah, that's a cliche. And the other half of my brain said, oh, it's a cliche, eh? All right, tell me one thing that has that same structure. And the other half of my brain went, and then it finally said, "Oh, Citizen Kane." Citizen Kane is the same structure, right? Where
you're like orbiting around looking for something recent and forgetting like the giant planet that's just right there.
Yeah, it's Citizen Kane is, it's a journalist who's trying to investigate what the hell was up with Rosebud or whatever, right? And it flashbacks to show you Citizen Kane's life. So the first half of the movie is basically that, the journalist investigating the dude. And then the second half of the movie, I don't know if it's the half, maybe final third, right, is sort of separate in that it's sort of a different act in which, okay, you found the dude or whatever, right? and now mountain climbing.
Yep.
Right? And then that's, I guess, the climax of the movie.
It's a
climax. Get it? Yeah.
It's a very thoughtful ending that wraps up all of the every theme that is presented in the movie is wrapped up very neatly and very provocatively, like just the way it ends and how it ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the core point of the movie is real, and I guess presumably the manga that I still probably should read but haven't is pretty much like, why the hell would you go mountain climbing?
Yeah, well, it's a little more nuanced than that, because look at what, without spoiling things, look what happens to this character. On one hand, the mountain climber character, not the journalist. The mountain climber is clearly driven and definitely has that sort of, everyone around me is not as good as me, even if they're my friends, I could do better by myself. Like, no one is on my level to climb with me. Mm-hmm. Simultaneously, it's thinking back to Master Keaton, and I'm not a master versus a professional. He's basically a professional here in that he is seeking the absolute extremes of skill to the point that he can really only rely on himself. And simultaneously, due to the tragic incident that occurs when he breaks the sort of rule he's made for himself.
Many tragic incidents.
Yep, but one in particular sets the stage for him to be very internally justified in climbing by himself. Like, he almost recognizes that, one, no one is on my level, and two, anyone who tries to be on my level, I am putting them at extreme risk, to the point that for the safety of others, I climb by myself.
Mm-hmm. All right, but basically, it takes that question of why would you go mountain climbing, but it applies it then, to just all of human life, right? Like, why would anyone do anything like mountain climbing? Why would you be driven to do anything? Period.
Yep.
Right. And the mountain climbing is just used as a lens to examine your own goals and your own drives, through it.
And also,
ask yourself that same question:
what is mountain climbing?
Because what would make you do 2,000 podcasts?
But it's a spectrum too, because look at in the very beginning. There's that the gang of friends are all mountain climbers together, and he's complaining like, they always turn back. They start late, they turn back, like they don't succeed at most of their climbs. But they're also mountain climbers. They're also like super skilled, but they're enjoying themselves, and they're not after the same thing he's after, even though they're doing the exact same activity. Which is a topic we talk about on Geek Nights a lot. Just because
the same hobby, the same interest, but enjoy it for different reasons in different ways, and don't get along as a result. Actually don't have much in common, even though you think they might, because they're both mountain climbers. But actually, no, there couldn't be more different. But
it's also framed in this, because there's the other guy he's competing with who dies, because a lot of mountain climbers die trying to do this stuff. The sort of meta framing, because this is not set in modern day. It's set in I think the late 90s, because you can tell by the laptop the journalist still has a 3.5-inch floppy hole on it. Yep, all film cameras, no cell phones.
And the digital cameras came around 2000. It was early 2000s. He probably would have moved up to a digital camera 2003 or something. So it's got to be late 90s based on the technology shown,
but also based on the backdrop of what is happening in mountain climbing, because there is the simpler story of why do people do like that. That's a very common trope in this kind of story, but there's a broader point around the sort of increasing search for the extreme to do something new or different or push a boundary specifically, because it talks a lot about how at first it was, can you climb something? And then people started climbing things. And then it started to edge into, climb increasingly dangerous things. And then, all right, let's climb things we've already climbed, but make it artificially dangerous. I'll do it without oxygen. I'll do it without support. I'll do it blind. There's this race among the professionals of increasing risk and increasing danger that they're putting onto themselves because of the goal that they're seeking, which is arguably unattainable.
Yep. I guess you can go to Mars and climb Olympus Mons instead, right? That'll get you.
But the sport
is tall, right?
But you can almost see that this is arguably a toxic aspect of things like mountain biking, mountain climbing, skiing, extreme sports, in that there is a culture of pushing those limits to the extreme, when for many people, like all the people who failed to summit in the very beginning and gave up when the storm came through, like reasonable people, they're still enjoying the sport. They're still supreme experts, but they got to the point where they can do the extreme quadruple black dangerous nonsense, but they choose not to. They use that skill to do something slightly less dangerous and have more fun doing it.
Yeah. So so this movie, right? It's interesting because it still has some of the aspects of like an Initial D, right? Like a lower brow sports manga, right? Because it gets really, whoever did the research on this, right? It's so technically correct with regards to the
every little detail about
the methods and, when they're actually climbing the mountains, like, it's like I don't know that much about mountain climbing, but you don't have to know that much to see that what they're doing that's the way it's done.
Like they're doing that, like laying the leads and the safety ropes like accurately. The knots are all accurate.
Someone drew them tying knots the correct way.
Yep.
The knots are supposed
or
to
the
be
accident with the kid when that happens. You can see behind him the exact thing that causes the incident. Yep. The rope is like slightly curled around this tiny little piece of rock that's sticking up.
Yep. So that's a good, you can learn, I guess, if this encourages you to do mountain climbing, I would hope that you would stick to low level.
Yep. Or level up.
Start at your local indoor climbing gym.
Yep. Because the one thing that was bothering me and that I wasn't sure how this movie was going to end was the idea that he's going to do the climb he does in the end of the movie without oxygen. And of course, the journalist is going to follow him. But there is no way that journalist is capable of doing what he's about to do. So the whole time, you're like, the tension for the audience is, there's no way he can make it. So how is this possibly going to end?
Right. So that is something I think that this particular story brings attention to that not many other stories I've seen do, right? The only other ones I think that come close are stories I've seen about like war photography, where it's like, if you're a photographer, it's like, you can get a big ass zoom lens, right? To shoot, animals or whatever from far away. But for the most part, if you're a professional photographer, certain subject matter requires you to not just be a photographer, but to also be something else, right? It's like you can't be a mountain climbing photographer if you're not a mountain climber. You can't be a skydiving photographer if you're not also a great skydiver.
Yeah, all those photos we have of like big sea battles in World War II, people in planes were flying through a dogfight, like taking those photos.
Right. It's like, so, some aerial photography these days, you can get someone else to fly the helicopter.
Yeah, drones have changed that to a significant degree. Like you can have a drone just follow you.
Well, you still need to be a drone pilot, which takes some skill.
Oh, there are completely automated. There's a cool set of, there's a drone.
There are automated ones, but
there's a drone I want, but it is illegal to use pretty much anywhere I will ever ski. It will go.
Just do it anyway.
No, at ski mountains, you get shut down.
I meant in the city, people just do it anyway.
Oh yeah,
even though
but
it's illegal,
these are drones that you put up, and they will just follow you on a program automatically without you doing anything, beginning to end.
Yep. Yeah, but it's not. Sometimes you want to get a fancy shot, and the automatic shot is not. Just like autofocus might not get the shot you want.
And the movie really makes a point of highlighting that, but it doesn't at any point address up until the final scene. Wait, so how is this going to work when he follows this guy? But it really, it points out that Mallory carrying that camera to prove that they did it. Even the Sherpa's like, he needs you. Otherwise, there won't be any proof that he did it, which I think is very subtle because the Sherpa knows exactly how this whole situation is going to go down.
So it serves three purposes, right? So one, it gives you some focus on the photographers and journalists of the world who are covering subject matter that requires themselves to be there are not getting the credit of their subjects, right? Even though they're pretty much right there next to them, right? A lot of the time, in some cases, right? Mountain climbing in particular. B, right? It gives you a way you can now see how amazing the one person is because they've put a very expert person next to them to give you that contrast, right? If they just show you a person climbing by themselves, as someone without knowledge of climbing, you can't really tell how great they're doing.
But I love how
someone next to them, and you can see how much better they are than the other person, and now you can understand what's going
I
on.
love how beautifully that is portrayed, because that final act is basically the journalist. You don't see the professional climbing. You see the journalist climbing, and he's following the tracks. And there's a lot of environmental storytelling along the way. Like he gets to that ravine, and you didn't see the professional do it. You see the journalist like figure out and like plan to do it himself. And the tension is you don't actually know exactly how the professional did it. The professional's already like miles ahead on the trail.
Yep. Well, in fact, the first part of the movie is also the journalist following the person, right?
But you see there, he's taking a parallel.
Once he finds him, he physically follows him afterwards. Right? So yeah, it's this movie, I think, it doesn't make me want to do mountain climbing, although, right, I recognize how amazing it would feel to be like at the top of a mountain and then to think, I got all the way the fuck up here with nothing but my own body and some sticks. Right?
If you want to try mountain climbing without like
I have no idea. I have no interest.
No, because there are like, I have summited Gothics, like that is achievable by someone like you.
But you know what it did make me want to do? Right? It makes me want to go on like a plane to the bottom of the mountain.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to go up the mountain. I just want to go to the bottom of the mountain.
You can do glacier hiking to see those vistas without having to go up.
Right. I could just like fly to where Mount Everest is and just like stay at Camp 1, like not climb anywhere. Camp 0, whatever, just stay at the airport, right? See, I could there's stuff there, right? See people, right? See the people who are climbing, look up at the sky.
It's not on that scale, but I've summited 6 of the high peaks in the Adirondacks, and it is quite an experience to get up onto like the actual top summit and look around you and see what it looks like from such a high vantage point.
Yeah, I'll go up any mountain that can be climbed via bicycle.
You could bike up Gothic if you're insane.
Does it have a road?
No. Mountain bike.
That doesn't count, does it?
You could bike up Whiteface. Whiteface has a road to the top. It's in the Adirondacks.
How high is it?
Very high. It's one of the high peaks in the Adirondacks.
How many feet?
Let me pull it up right now. Whiteface. Because that was the most boring mountain I've ever climbed up there, to be honest. Whiteface, how tall are you? About a mile.
Oh, okay. I can.
The peak,
feet, right?
The top elevation is about
something?
Top elevation is about 5,000 feet.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yep, the prominence of it over the land is about 3,000 feet. It's a relatively easy hike to the top.
If there's a road, I could bike up that.
There is a road. I don't know if people bike it.
I just go slow. I go weeka.
Biking up Whiteface. Oh yeah, it seems like it's a thing people do. Cycling Whiteface Mountain.
Yeah. All right.
It's not even. You'll do a 3,500 foot elevation gain, 8 miles, average gradient 8.4%. It's not that bad actually.
Right. I'll go weeka.
That's such a long route though. When I climbed this thing, I basically just went straight up that steep side there.
Yeah, the road probably goes like a spiral or a back and forth.
Yeah, the road goes like way up and around this really easy gradient compared to what I climbed.
Hey.
Anyway, but so two other things that I noted about this movie that I really liked, because I have very few complaints about it. Just one observation of something they messed up.
I'll get to my complaint with
the complaint. And when Emily saw it, the first thing she said, and it was so obvious when you see the movie, is all the characters emote like French people and not like Japanese people. There's a lot of like hand gesticulation and like the way people are talking. True. It really stands out.
Yep, true.
But what I like is that the movie did not make a judgment or a moral pronouncement about whether or not people should do the various things that are shown in the movie. It's very much we're just exploring why people do this, and we're showing what they do without judgment.
Show it how it is, and then that's it.
It wasn't like the end of the movie was, see, that's what happens. It was more like, let's explore why this happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like that, just like you talked about the photographers, like that aspect, it also really shows off subtly. The other thing about big mountain climbing, like Everest is a big example, the white people who make a big deal about climbing it get a lot of support from Sherpas who have been climbing around on that mountain for a long, long time. Well, Sherpas are hauling all their gear up for them. The Sherpa in the movie has extreme knowledge of it's almost like he has foresight about how this is going to go down as a result.
I do think that, from what I've read about Everest specifically, right? I was also sort of disappointed the movie was about Everest because it's so overplayed, but it's fine, right?
It was less overplayed then. That was like the beginning of the era of it becoming a tourist destination, basically.
Well, but not when the manga was written.
No.
But regardless, from what I've read about Everest is that when you go to it now, it's almost like tourist attraction, right? And it's like this manga doesn't show that aspect of it, but partially they get away with it because he's climbing the other side, where the not tourist side, right? So it's like, okay, I guess it's okay not to show the tourists because they're not in the spot where the tourists are, right? But, but anyway, so the thing that bothered me is that art-wise, right, the character designs, right, were, seem to be taken straight from the manga, really excellent. They obviously, everything was computer animated. You can just tell, but still pretty good, right? It's not like something to complain about. It's not like they did it in a bad, offensive way. And the backgrounds were always usually incredible, right? Just to look at, which is kind of important.
Yep. The soundscape was extremely good too. It really set the mood with all those establishing shots. Tiny character, giant mountain in the background.
Yep. And, in scenes where things were animated, they were animated well. But the one thing that was noticeable is how much they cut back on, and which is something that happens, I guess, a lot in anime in general, since the times of Astro Boy, obviously. But for a 90-minute movie, right, there are a lot of times you could just tell they cut way back on the number of drawings in parts where it didn't count, like a lot. There was a scene of like a crowd of people on a street, and they were just sort of like two framing like up and down, like doop 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 doop, and it was like a little guy in the corner running one time, and it was like it was like doop doop doop. It looked like a little flip book, right? It's like a lot of the inconsequential aspects, right, were basically not moving. There were some scenes I saw where they took advantage of the computer. There was like a montage where half of the montage was still frames, and in the computer they moved around the digital light source, right, in a clever way. I think there was a guy, he was like standing over a highway holding a glass bottle.
Oh, that was a really good scene, I thought.
Right, so the cars were going underneath, and they were shining through the bottle, which is a really cool effect. But what was actually being animated was he was just sitting completely still, and they were just moving the digital light on his face every time a headlight went past, right? And it's like, that's a really big effect for a very cheap, technique wise, right? So it's really good economy of animation.
Well, it was also a very striking scene that you could visualize, like you could see that happening. That's the kind of scene you could see in real life of someone standing there, and every car goes by and their light, you see their face for just a second.
Right. So that's an example of being economical with animation, but still getting a big effect. But in a lot of other scenes that weren't, if it wasn't like the signature action of like, the main part of the scene, background characters, any stuff like that was economically animated, perhaps too much for when I watch a movie, when it's only 90 minutes, I guess I have a higher expectation, right? To not see that sort of, lower budget kind of stuff going on, right?
The other thing I appreciated,
you won't see, like still haven't seen Belle, but I guarantee you, right, that like just some background person is going to just be animated fantastically.
Based on the handful of reviews I've skimmed about Belle, people are. I cannot believe that it is as good as people are implying.
Yeah,
but
I guess that's the only art complaint is just and
in the end, in terms of
in the corners, right, or whatever.
Like if you take one thing away from the movie. Like I like how very subtly but directly it shows that the photographer and Habu are both doing the exact same thing. There is no difference between like what they're doing other than extremity. Like he's trying to, like, why is he trying to figure out if Mallory hit the top of Everest first or not? Like, why does he care? Even his boss doesn't care that much.
Well, the boss didn't care until he thought there might be money in it.
Yeah. Then he cared enough to send, but even then.
But the boss is just like, hey, people want to see you take great photos, right? People want to see the photos. Go take some, right?
Yep.
It's like he's like,
I also
The boss
appreciated.
the boss didn't have a wrong attitude. I like the boss.
I've never experienced altitude sickness. The closest I've gotten is in Park City, Utah.
Oh, that was a good. Yeah, there was an abstract art scene of like trying to convey what it feels like to have the altitude sickness. That was like the highlight scene animation wise, I think.
Because it's almost like you hear about like a blackout or a whiteout. The closest I've ever experienced to that is like, you could call it a redout almost, but it is like this. Your eyes are just like, it's almost like your eyes are closed and you're looking through your own eyelids. Like if you're oxygen deprived to that point.
Yeah, I have no intention of ever being in a situation where that could happen.
I mean, it's kind of, from what I've read about altitude sickness, it's not even a matter of skill. It's a matter of genetic luck, how much it affects you.
Yeah, but
like you can't train that
just
much.
Not going anywhere high up, period, whether I have the genetic problem.
You never want to get to the top of Mount Fuji?
No, isn't it a volcano?
Yeah. It's probably not going to go off like
dangerous.
No, people climb it all the time. Actually, we're planning to climb it when we go back to Japan.
Okay.
I was literally researching routes last week before we decided to watch Summit of the Gods.
Well, don't fall.
I don't think I will. But yeah, I
haven't read it. I'm sure if falling off of Mount Fuji was a regular occurrence, I'd know. I'd read stories about it. But
yep, there was just an almost fatal fall apparently that YouTube kept recommending to me, probably because I was googling Mount Fuji a bunch.
Well, I guess you're not going up there. I'll take the. Is there a cable car? I'll take the cable car.
Yeah, there's a bunch of old.
Can I bike up Mount Fuji?
I don't know.
Is there a road?
There's a bunch of old people ways to get up there though.
That definitely seems like too tall for biking, right?
Well, hey, if you once COVID dies down, one thing I am planning to do just with our friend group is get a cabin up in the Adirondacks because I want to go climb more high peaks. Like I haven't been up there in a long time, and a bunch of our friends like hiking, so I can plot a hike for like the people who don't want to climb mountains. Me and Emily and like maybe Skojo and a few other people are going to go climb a few mountains. You could just come on that trip and bike up Whiteface while we're climbing it.
Is that the only one that has a road, though?
That's the only one I know of that has a road.
I only bike on roads.
Yeah, so you bike up Whiteface and back down.
Any other roads out there?
A few of us.
Paved roads.
A few of us. Let's see. Last time I was there, I climbed Whiteface and some other mountain. And the time before that, we did the 2 Wolf Jaws and Gothics and a mountain I don't remember the name of.
Yeah, not interested in going up a mountain.
But do it on your bike, and we'll do something else. But anyway, this movie's just on Netflix. Like, if you have Netflix, it's only 90 minutes long. It's beautifully animated for the most part. It's well worth watching.
You just spent probably close to that long listening to this Geek Nights episode.
Right?
What's wrong with you?
Just go watch the movie right now. We literally both watched it right before we did this show. All right, I'll end the stream.